Hello tankresses and tankers, this is Mouse Hunter from noobclub.net, and today we're going to talk about the tech trees and which line you should pick, especially if you're not that familiar with the game. Which lines offer you the most possibilities, makes it quicker for you to discover new tanks and to find the ones you like the most. Let's have a look at the tech tree. If you pick a line, you battle with a tank, where you research the modules, you research the next tank, buy the next tank, battle again, research the modules, research the next tank, and so on and so forth. Like the French tech tree, it's pretty straightforward. There's actually only one junction. So then, for example, if you go the heavy line, you just go all tanks until you reach tier 10 one day. But there are other nations that are more interesting, because they have more junctions and allow you to switch the branch. Let's have a look at the British tank tree first. And some, or maybe a lot of players might be tempted to look at the tier 10 tanks immediately. Wow, big machines, big guns, strong armor. But unless you intend to play this game 24/7, it will take you a very long time till you get there. So I suggest that you pay attention to the tier 4, tier 6 and tier 8 tanks in particular, because I believe there are a lot of very interesting tanks in these tiers in between. Today I only want to show you those lines that have junctions, which means you only have to go through the low tier tanks once, and then at the junction you can decide which branch you want to continue on. That would be the Cruiser 1, Cruiser 2 and Valentine. And here at tier 4 is the first junction. You can now decide whether you want to go the heavy line, starting with the Churchill 1, or whether you want to take the artillery line, starting with the Bishop. And if you select the heavy line, then at tier 5 there's another junction, which allows you to stay on the heavy line or switch to the TD branch. Let's have a look at the American tech tree. The American tech tree has one very interesting line. That's the midi line here at the bottom, where the T2 medium, the M2 medium, and the M3 Lee, which you're gonna love or hate. There's hardly anything between. And then you should buy the M4 Sherman. And here at tier 5 is the first junction. If you want to go the heavy line, you should then, next tank should be the Sherman Jumbo, and then you can go down here to the heavy line, at T29, T32 and so on. At tier 6 there is another junction where you can go back to the midi line, or if you select the E8 Sherman, you can also go that midi line, or you can go up here to the Jackson, that's the TD line. I just want to mention, if you like the Hellcat and TDs with a turret, that would be the other line, but that's another story. Now let's have a look at the most confusing tech tree in the game, Germany. Such a lot of arrows, and some are so small you can hardly see them, like here from the Panzer 3A to the Panzer 4A. There's a very tiny arrow there. And also it might look like a very flexible tech tree because of the amount of junctions here and here and here, but a lot of them reunite, like here at tier 5 or tier 6 or later here at tier 8. There's actually only one line that I find interesting, and that is the light line, the Panzer 35T, Panzer 38T, and then the Panzer 38NA. Let's move it here. Okay, from the Panzer 38NA on, I think it gets interesting. From here you can switch to a TD line or to both heavy lines. The TD line starts with the tier 4 Hetzer and then leads to the Stuk 3G, the Jagdpanzer 4 and so on. Or you continue to the Panzer 4H, the midi, and then the next midi, and then the heavy line that leads to the Maus. That's the upper one. Or here, after you have the Panzer 4H, you can immediately switch to the second heavy line with the VK3601H, the Tigers. That one leads then to the E100. So, finally, we will have a look at the Russian tech tree, which I believe is the most versatile of them all, because there's one very, very interesting line, which begins with a T26, a T46, and a T28, which then leads to the famous KV1. The KV1 is probably the largest junction in the game. First of all, the KV1 leads to the KV1S, which then leads to the KV85. That's the heavy line that actually leads to the tier 10 tank, the IS-7. But the KV85 offers you another opportunity to switch to the midi line, at least one of the midi lines. Mind this little arrow here, because once you have the KV13, you have to research the T43, and then you can go this midi line here. So, back to the KV1. The next heavy you can research is the T150, which is pretty much straightforward, and it leads to the tier 10 IS-4. And also, the KV1 leads to the KV2, the famous, the notorious, the ruthless killer derp gun tank. Just one moment, please. I'd like to ask a favor of you. Please click the like button, share this video with your friends, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and become a Noob Club member to gain access to even more videos. Go to noobclub.net/join and get some bonuses. Thank you. And now let's continue. And most interestingly, the KV2 leads to a tier 7 artillery. That is actually what makes the KV1 so interesting, because from the KV1 on, you could actually choose between 4 different branches. But the Russian tech tree offers another surprise. If you go from the T46 to the T50, which leads to the T34, you just reached another big junction in the game. You can either switch branches and go the TD line with the SU-85, SU-100 and so on. Or you can stay on the midi line. Actually, there are 2 midi lines, and there's one light line, but they reunite at tier 9 again. But most interestingly, if you go from the T34 to the T34-85, you can actually go to the KV13, which then will lead to the IS. So you also have a chance to go to one of the heavy lines. That's the one that leads to the IS-7 tier 10 tank. That is why I think the Russian tech tree is the most versatile. And I recommend the Russian tech tree to any player who doesn't really know which line to take, which tank to pick. Do I like TDs more, or heavies, or midis, or artillery? Go get the KV1 and the T34. With these 2 tanks, you have all opportunities. You can select TDs, midis, lights, heavies, and even artillery. Now I hope this introduction helps you to get started, so you'll have your own collection of nice tanks pretty soon. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Hopefully I'll see you soon at noobclub.net. And now, take care out there on the battlefield. Of course, if you like artillery, you have to go artillery. There are no junctions beyond tier 4. Also, midi, there's also not really a big choice. Blah blah blah. We skip that. And of course, the KV1 leads to the KV2. Actually the derp gun tank. Everybody who does not have a derp gun on this tank is I don't know, weird.